Back to square one for the Michigan Wolverines. It's college football smothered and covered.
You are Locked On College Football, smothered and covered, with your host, Barrett Sallee. Your one-stop shop for everything college football. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hey, welcome into the Tuesday edition of the show. Thank you for making this your first listen every single day. Really appreciate you guys checking this out. Please share it, subscribe, all of that stuff. Ring that notification bell on YouTube. Today's show brought to you by FanDuel, FanDuel.com. You can make your first $5 bet. They will give you $200 in bonus bets. That's right, your first $5 bet gets you $200 in bonus bets at FanDuel. Go to FanDuel.com, America's #1 sports book. So we are going to talk about some interesting aspects to the season that I think need to be discussed, that haven't been discussed maybe as much as they should. We'll also talk about the Oklahoma situation and what is going on with Brent Venables. But first, we're going to talk about a Michigan's quarterback situation. If you did not see the news, Jack Tuttle maybe benched, Davis Warren back in the fold, Alex Orji back in the fold. Everybody's hitting the reset button in Ann Arbor. And look, Michigan fans, you should be mad at Jim Harbaugh. I know his legacy is what it is. His legacy is that he's a Michigan man. He led Michigan to a national championship. He, rode off into the sunset as somebody who you will never forget and had, at least in theory, left the program in good standing and left the program where it needs to be in order to compete moving forward. Look, Jack Tuttle threw for just over 200 yards last week, and that was the most a Michigan quarterback has thrown for this season. You lost to Illinois. You got smoked by Illinois. Now, no offense to my former coworker, Tom Fornelli at CBS. Illinois is good. They're not great. They should not beat Michigan by double digits. That just should not happen. And full respect to Brett Bielema, who I know and who I think is a fantastic person. That shouldn't happen. Jim Harbaugh didn't develop anybody. Jim Harbaugh, I think, understood that he was going to leave several years ago. And so he didn't even care about developing a quarterback. He didn't care about digging deep into what some of the guys that he's recruiting can do, how coachable they are, what their upside is. And so now, look, when you have to start a walk-on in game one, and you've got a guy in Alex Orji who we thought the upside was there, and they have a guy in Jack Tuttle who was a little banged up, I get it, but he's a journeyman, but he's a physically talented journeyman. There's a reason he was highly recruited. You're in a bad situation if you're Sharon Moore. Clearly, Harbaugh neglected that program. And that's why I think the legacy of Jim is so complicated, because he went from having Derek Jeter and all of these guys at this signing with the stars event shortly after he got that job for National Signing Day. It was like this huge production. And they had a decent class. They had Rashawn Gary a couple years later. They had decent classes, but they weren't winning. And suddenly things started to go downhill. And then COVID hit, and basically Michigan had to hit the reset button. But it's almost like since that point, they got some good players. And we see that with Johnson and Graham, some other players that have been around that program who were part of its success and part of the effort that Jim had to build it into a national championship program. But they just haven't had a situation, they have not developed it. And I think Sharon Moore knew it. I think when Sharon Moore took over this program, you go back and listen to and read some of the things that he said in spring practice and even fall camp, that there was a little apprehension. It almost felt like he was setting up a regression to the mean a little bit. And maybe that's to save himself embarrassment. Maybe that's to save the program from embarrassment. I don't know. It could be a combination of a whole bunch of things. But I think ultimately, because you're sitting here on October 22nd, if you're Sharon Moore, and you're looking around thinking, I have absolutely no clue who my quarterback is. You've started 3 guys, including a walk-on to open the season. It means this is a systemic problem, and it has been a systemic problem that's been bubbling underneath the surface. Now, where does Michigan go from here? You can't pass. Like, clearly, the passing game is a problem. We've seen what they can do. There's a foundation for them to run the dang ball. If you're going to abandon the passing game, which I think at this point is something that needs to happen, just go with Orji. Say, hey, look, we're going to not necessarily run triple option, but we're basically going to become a run first, second, third. And I tell you what, go back to watch when Georgia Southern, this is 2014, 2015, something like that, when they joined FBS, won the Sun Belt, but couldn't go to the conference championship game because they were still in transition. Go back and look at that Willie Fritz offense. That Willie Fritz offense with Georgia Southern was essentially a new age version of the triple option because they didn't have anybody that could pass. Like, they didn't have anybody who could do it. So Michigan fans, go watch that film. That's what Michigan should be, at least this year. Moving forward, though, can this hurt the vision that Sharon Moore has for the program? Look, he's not on the hot seat. He deserves a ton of leeway after winning the national championship and losing a medium-sized village of players. But he better go out there and absolutely kill it on the recruiting trail and in the transfer portal this year. Because if you have multiple seasons where you're an afterthought, you can go down in a hurry. In fact, I would say you have one season where you sort of disappear off the national landscape, it can hurt you for 2 or 3 or 4. And I think a perfect example of this is the Washington Huskies. Michigan and Washington played a couple weeks ago. It was a rematch of the national championship game. Nobody cared. Nobody cared. Why? In part Michigan, mostly Washington. They've fallen completely off a cliff and have become persona non grata in the Big Ten. And I don't think they can change that. I don't think Jed Fish has any chance of using that name brand to build them out quickly. Michigan has the benefit of being a name brand. Kids have short memories. High school kids have short memories. They don't even remember Florida during the Urban Meyer era being good. They don't remember it. It was not something that was on their radar. They were little kids. So it does go quickly, Michigan. So you do have that track record of success the last 3 years, being in the playoff and obviously winning a national championship. You don't have the luxury of time, because these short memories these high school kids have, they're not going to think of Michigan as a national championship team for very long. That's just reality in this day and age. We'll take a break. Speaking of reality and not reality, Oklahoma's vision is not necessarily coming to light. We'll talk a little bit about that coming up after the break. It's college football smothered and covered. And of course, we are powered by Locked On. Hey, Smothered and Covered fans, today's show brought to you by Roy. It's time to recognize the Roy Player of the Week. So far this season, we've pooled over 20 grand to support players on Roy. Micro deposits lead to massive change. With the Roy app, you can direct your support to the athletes you love, ensuring all funds go to specific players that you choose. Unlike collectives, you know exactly where your support is going. You even receive exclusive content like personal videos and updates after the season. The best part, it's risk-free. If your athlete transfers and doesn't deliver the content, you get your money back right there. This week, I'm supporting Dylan Sampson of Tennessee. The foundation of the Tennessee offense has always been the running game, and we saw what he could do against Alabama in that big win on Rocky Top. I just pitched in $100, and I'd love for you to join me. Even $10 makes a big difference. Let's show Dylan the love and keep you connected to your school and keep him connected to the Vols. Remember, pay today, celebrate tomorrow. Your support sets your team up for success. Plus, don't miss out on Roy's exciting giveaway. Win 2 tickets to a game in November. Just download Roy, create an account, and enter that referral code Locked On, and you're entered. Already on Roy? Any contribution to an athlete's campaign also gets you entered automatically. No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited. Download Roy now and join the NIL game with no subscriptions and no fees. Be sure to check us out on Instagram, Facebook, and X at Roy_return on you. Roy_return on you for more info. Roy, support the players, change the game. Okay, I wrote this or asked the poll question on X on Saturday after South Carolina during South Carolina's beatdown of Oklahoma. Is Brent Venables on the hot seat? And surprise, surprise, X actually had decent results and said, no, he's not. And I think that's kind of true. I think that's kind of true for now. But it's also a very loaded question. And what I mean by that is that when you start to jettison coordinators mid-season, which is what happened on Sunday with Seth Luttrell being dismissed and, Joe John coming up and being the play caller and Brent messing around with some options. And look, Joe John Finley's a good quarterback or a good coordinator. I can't wait to see what happens with him calling the plays. But you have a coach that is jettisoning coordinators mid-season with 2 quarterbacks who neither of them have been successful at all. In fact, Jackson Arnold was supposed to be a superstar. He was supposed to be the guy that is going to come in and be Johnny Football, or maybe not to that point, but be the guy that is going to lead Oklahoma to success right away in the SEC. And it hasn't happened. Why hasn't it happened? Offensive line, work in progress, hasn't really progressed. Wide receiving core, injured. Everybody's hurt. Those aren't Jackson Arnold's fault. Or that's not his fault. But he should still have he should still be able to have some success, reasonable success, not throw two short hops to receivers. It's not supposed to be that way. Michael Hawkins comes in, fails. Now it's Jackson Arnold back at the helm. Look, Brent Venables is not on the hot seat right this very second, but he is on a cliff. And I haven't talked to anybody about this, but I've been around this game. It's my 24th year covering college football. When you start to do some of these things, panic move to a quarterback, panic move back to the original starter who failed, you fire your offensive coordinator. When you're doing all this stuff, you're on a cliff. Like, you are on a cliff. You're not at the edge yet, but you're looking down thinking, dang, it's a long way. It's a long way. I don't want to get to the edge of this cliff. I don't want to get close enough to this where the rock might break and I go falling down. That's where Brent Venables is. That, to me, it's gotten to a point where he has no vision for the offense at all. I don't care that he's a defensive-minded guy. That is not a great place to be when you have Ole Miss in Oxford. You have a Missouri team in Columbia that is better than you. I don't care what you think of Missouri overall, certainly better than Oklahoma. We don't care about the main game. You got Alabama, and you got to go to Death Valley. I'm looking at Oklahoma right now. I'm thinking, all right, 4-3, 1-3 in the SEC. Where are the wins coming from? You get Maine, that's a 5th. Might be 6-6. Might be 6-6. In year one in the SEC, we talked about this kind of like with Michigan. You need to at least make some sort of statement, and beating Auburn in Auburn is not it. You have to make at least some sort of statement. Otherwise, you're going to fall way behind in recruiting, in NIL, in everything. Because nobody's going to care that you're Oklahoma. And I got in trouble. Not in trouble. Oklahoma fans really didn't like me this summer when I said some things that I think are true, and you're seeing them bear out right now, that Oklahoma in this conference is not going to be Texas. It's not going to be Alabama. It's not going to be Georgia. It's going to be more like Auburn. It's going to be more like Texas A&M. You know, schools that Tennessee, usually, not this year, where they're pretty good. All right, most years. Sometimes they pop and threaten for bigger and better things, but most of the time they're just sort of there, right? I don't even know if they've reached that point yet this year. I don't think anybody really cares. I don't think anybody in the SEC, any fans in the SEC, any recruits in the footprint, any transfers from around the country look at Oklahoma and think anything of them at all, right? And this is a traditional blue blood program. Traditional. I would say in this new era, they're viewed more like sizzle but not steak after what happened, or more importantly, didn't happen when they made the playoffs consistently under Lincoln Riley. So how do you get back to the level where you show that you're a blue blood program for a reason? I don't think they trust Brent Venables to do that. Why should they? Why would they? When you are not only letting Texas get ahead of you, but you have Tennessee, A&M, LSU, South Carolina, even Florida, Ole Miss, all of these teams, Tennessee, I said Tennessee, Vandy, all of these teams have jumped ahead of you, Oklahoma. Getting back to the original point, is Brent the guy that can dig you out of this hole? Knowing that Jackson Arnold was nowhere close to the superstar that everybody seemed to think he would be. The offensive line was not developed at all. The wide receiving core, you sort of get a mulligan on that. I get it. And defensively, they've been pretty solid, but at some point you just wear out. And that's where they are right now. Do you trust Brent to dig out of the hole? Or, I don't know, do you kick the tires of Curt Cignetti? Even if you're not planning on making an actual change, do you just kick those tires and say, hey, bud, you like us? Like, be that, at the other end of the bar, the dude who's like, okay. Should I go talk to her or not? I think that conversation's happening, and there's going to be money at Oklahoma. They have it. Do they have it in droves compared to a lot of other SEC schools? No, but they've still got it for other coaches that maybe don't work in this realm. Just saying. So is Brent Venables coaching for his job? It's a possibility. Is it a probability? No. Is it a possibility from here on out? Yes. Don't forget to subscribe to the subtext. Just look in the description below. You will see the subtext group. You can join. You can send me text messages all you want. You can tell me how much you hate me. You can tell me how much you love me. I will give you insight and tidbits of things that I'm working on behind the scenes, information and fun stuff like that as well. So join the subtext group. You'll get exclusive Q&A sessions as well. So all of it's right there in the description below. Join the subtext group. It's a lot of fun. Having a lot of fun with those dudes over there. We'll take a break. When we come back, we will talk a little bit about the most interesting season and why this is the most interesting season in college football in a very, very long time. It's College Football Smothered and Covered. And of course, we are powered by Locked On. Today's show brought to you by FanDuel. Really appreciate the folks over at FanDuel picking up some of the show and, supporting us, doing a great job supporting us. Hey, you go to FanDuel, America's #1 sports book, and you can get all of the information you can possibly want. Play-by-play, game stats, all of that is right there on the same page in which you place your bet. So there's no need to go all over the creation to find some trends and things like that. It's all right there where you place your bets. You make a $5 bet, just one $5 bet, your first one, you get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's right, one $5 bet gets you $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Go to FanDuel.com. FanDuel.com, America's #1 sportsbook. All right, so every team has a flaw, right? We look around, every team has a flaw. All these great teams have flaws. Oregon fixed theirs, but it took a little while. 2 games to be exact. What changed? What changed in college football? Well, it's the transfer portal. It is that simple. We always talk about what's changed, and good or bad, whatever, it's the transfer portal. Why? Why are we having this kind of parity? Why is this the most uncertain season since 2007 when Rutgers, when South Florida, when Louisville out of the Big East, all of them were in the top 5. South Florida was number 2 at one point. LSU made the BCS championship game with 2 losses. Why is this happening? Well, it's pretty simple. The only part of our college football world that has been hurt by the transfer portal is the depth on the great teams. It's the depth on the great teams. I'm talking about the Alabamas, Ohio States, Georgias, all them, right? That's the only thing that's been hurt. Middle tier Power 5 teams, they get good players. They get great players. And I look at Eli Holstein at Pitt, who's absolutely killing it. Right? Anybody know who he was before the season? You knew him as a hotshot recruit. He was a nobody on the Alabama roster. He goes to Pitt, realizes his potential, and is now a superstar. He wouldn't have played at Alabama, maybe ever. You don't have those guys who sit for 3 years and then finally get their chance to play. Why? Because they can play somewhere else, even a team that's pretty darn comparable to where they are, and star and become a superstar. So because you have the lack of depth at Alabama, Georgia, Oregon, you have situations where you have some head scratchers. And that's great because a lot of those guys are going down to lower level teams and having success like Eli Holstein. Some of those guys, like Curtis Rourke, have proven they can win consistently and be successful on a lower level in the group of 5, find a great home in Indiana, and blow up. The talent has dispersed in a way where, yeah, the best players and the best teams are still great, but right below them, simmering, are loaded rosters that would not have anything close to the talent they have had it not been for the transfer portal. And it's going to continue. It's going to be a lot of fun from here on out. We're not going to talk about how that transfers and translates into the college football playoff because we haven't done this before. Anybody who has a strong take, positive or negative, about the 12-team playoff doesn't have any legitimacy to that. You haven't been here before. We don't know what it's going to look like. We have a theory about what it's going to look like, but we haven't done it before. But for now, the most interesting season since 2007, it's because of the lack of depth at the top, and it has raised the tide Rising tide floats all boats of the middle to lower tier teams. It's great. So much fun. That will do it for this edition of the show. Reminder, go check out Locked On College Football. Spencer McLaughlin does a great job over there. You can also join my subtext group, description below. You could contact me personally, even if you hate me. Totally cool with that. We'll be back tomorrow. Be a good show tomorrow, rest of the week as well. Got some good guests coming on Thursday and Friday. So stay tuned for that. Until Wednesday, have a good one. We'll talk to you soon.